good evening to you both. And let's begin with the late night wrap up of the spring sitting, with the government pushing through a flurry of bills, including a last minute change to legislation making it easier to launch a referendum on separation.
Alberta's government has heard concerns from First Nations regarding how a referendum question may impact existing treaties between First Nations and the Crown. We are listening and we recognize the importance of protecting treaty rights, which is why we're proposing this amendment.
Acknowledging the treaties does not mean much when you are threatening its very existence. Well, Mr. Chair, this amendment does not give any assurance to me nor the Chiefs.
An 11th hour amendment to Bill 54 declares that no separation referendum could threaten First Nations treaty rights. The legislation has faced significant backlash from Indigenous leaders since its introduction more than 2 weeks ago. Marg, I'll start with you. How challenged will the Smith government be in taking a referendum question on separation forward and not impacting treaty rights?
I think they'll be very challenged. It was interesting, they brought up the amendment last night when they've known for a good week or more that this is an issue. And at the end of the day, this is something they need to do by constitution. So it looks like the threat, or it isn't a threat, it will occur this afternoon, a big gathering at the legislature by Indigenous people from all three treaties to get them to move at all. And I think it's going to be ending up in the courts on a number of fronts.
Sarah, with the amendment in mind, what do you see the Smith government now setting up for?
Well, Michael, I think that if Justice Minister Mickey Amery and Premier Danielle Smith were actually listening to Albertans as well as the leaders of the three nations, then they would know that we don't have any interest in a referendum on Alberta separation, but they do, and so that's what they're forcing through. So if they were to actually listen to Albertans, and polling very clearly shows that a majority of Albertans do not wish to separate from Canada, as well as the existential issue of treaties, making this basically illegitimate in so many different ways. But because the UCP is governing for a very vocal group of people who have this desire and not for the best interest of Albertans, this will continue to proceed, just like we saw a minor amendment being made to legislation that shouldn't have even been introduced.
Marg, a number of bills pushed through Wednesday in wrapping things up, including one health critics say is a move toward privatization. So the session as a whole, how productive was it?
Well, if you're the UCP, they would see it as productive. They rammed a bunch of things through, but agreeing with Sarah, they haven't talked to Albertans. They've rammed through a number of things that are on their agenda without consultation to Albertans in, whether it's healthcare, Indigenous rights, and the fact that they limited time on a number of those things just to ram it through says they don't really care about what Albertans are thinking. It's all to push through their agenda.
Sarah, this sitting in terms of generating spotlight attention and beyond the separation talk, how much of an impact do you think now independent MLA Peter Guthrie had on the spring sitting?
Oh, I think he had a lot of impact. And I think that's yet another reason for the UCP to want to cut the sitting short, is because the public is hearing for the first time from former members of their caucus who are now actually talking to Albertans about what they have experienced inside the inner sanctum of the UCP environment in the Alberta legislature. And they want to put the lid on this as fast as possible. I heard a really great speech, a member's statement from a member from, I think, Lesser Stave Lake, and holy moly, that man, put him on a debate stage against Premier Danielle Smith and Naheed Nenshi, honestly. Because what he was talking, I think a majority of Albertans are interested in, which is limited government, thoughtful spending, let people be who they are when they are, socially progressive. Those are the values, I think, of a majority of Albertans. Those are not the values of the UCP.
All right. Now, on the issue of separation, talk of a referendum is rattling cages, both politically, but also now in the business sector.
You can't be a conditional Canadian. And I think the idea of separating is just a crackpot idea. The cost in terms of investor confidence would be massive.
The former premier there is on ATCO's board of directors, and his comments came at the annual shareholders meeting in Calgary Wednesday. ATCO's CEO, Nancy Southern, also says talk of separation, creating uncertainty, already scaring off potential Pacific Rim energy clients for her company. Sarah, what do you make of Jason Kenney, the voice that he brings to this whole debate over a referendum on separation? He's certainly made a return to the social media realm to express many of his opinions.
Well, I have to say that I welcome hearing from former Premier Jason Kenney on this issue, because I think he is preaching common sense in some ways. I do want to just say that I find it very, 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 very bad when anyone, no matter of what political stripe they belong to, when they start using the words like fringe, because I think that has contributed to a large part of the alienation that a large number of people are feeling, which has not only led to many different things happening in our society, but also advancing the idea of Alberta separation. So I'm all for his comments, with the exception of those kinds of things. But he's exactly right, as is Nancy Southern. This is going to drive away investment. Again, the UCP claims to be a government that is, about the economy. They are the absolute opposite about being for the economy. This does not grow investor confidence. This does not attract investment to our province. It does nothing to tell the business sector that this is a safe and stable place for you to invest your money, because this is where it's going to grow. It is creating uncertainty. It is contributing to economic, money actually leaving probably at some point. So this is it. Yeah. It's great to hear from him.
Marg, you're a former Minister of Energy and Minerals. Yeah. How much weight do you see Alberta's business community bringing to politically charged dialogue around separating? And how surprised are you by comments coming from the CEO of ATCO?
I'm not surprised at all. I've been hearing anecdotally that there's a big chill coming on any project, any thought of a pipeline or major infrastructure project in Alberta until we get this item sorted. Investors like certainty. This is the opposite of any kind of certainty. And I guarantee there'll be nothing built until, or even contemplated, until this sovereignty question is answered or put away to bed for once and for all.
Off the top, we heard from one of the candidates running under the PACE banner for a seat on Edmonton City Council, PACE being the first of the municipal political parties to launch in the Alberta capital, thanks to changes in provincial legislation last year. Margaret, in terms of political organization, what are newly arriving parties going to need to lock in if they are to make the impact that they're hoping for? What does that level of organization look like?
That's a good question. I think as your panelist said, or your interviewee said, they have an opportunity to create a bit of a slate of what their beliefs are. So I assume on the ballot it'll say the person's name and then PACE in their case, or whatever other parties come. So they have a chance to sort of come as a group and a group think, I guess. It seems like a short runway till the next election to do it, but I guess it's worth a try. I know there's a lot of dissatisfaction with the way things are now, so I guess it's worth trying, and we'll see.
Sarah, what's your early read on how voters in Calgary and Edmonton are likely to respond to the arrival of municipal parties? Are they more likely to be drawn to the identity of the parties or the candidates?
I think it depends, Michael, if it's a candidate, so an incumbent, meaning someone who's already on council or a name that they are familiar with, versus an unknown. So a party name could potentially give an unknown candidate a bump in terms of being associated with a group rather than just an individual. But it's going to be really interesting to see. I can honestly say that personally, I'm not in favor of political parties at the municipal system. And the outcome that I am hoping for actually here in Calgary is one where it's fine if people do want to vote for parties, but I'm hoping for a number of voices around the council table. And I think that would be both good for Edmonton and Calgary, that represent different voices from different parties and independents, because I am very much concerned that we're going to have a group of people, if a number of people from only one party get elected, that they're just going to decide this is the way we're going to do things and this is the way we want it to be. And you elected us based on us being a group. And I think that's bad for democracy, and I think that's bad for taxpayers.
Marg, we asked Fidel Amar about this, but how necessary will it be for these new parties to latch on to identities that place them to a specific point on the political spectrum?
I think he tried to avoid placing himself on a spectrum, but I think people are naturally going to do that. And that's a risk for them. I certainly agree with Sarah. I like the fact that municipal elections now bring a variety of voices. And in fact, provincially, people have been asking that, and federally. So there is a danger that they'll get placed, whether they like it or not, on a spectrum. But I guess it remains to be seen, the logistics, and whether there's so much confusion over it that it might not end up being what they want.
Sarah, these new parties they'll garner a lot of attention. They'll garner headlines between now and October when the election happens. But how likely are these new parties to have organizational staying power, be able to carve out identities that will last through the years between future municipal elections?
Well, I think that depends on maybe two big things right off the top of my head. First is how much success they have in the election in October, and then also just how organized they are. So that's not something that we'll necessarily see out front, but behind the scenes in terms of the structure that they put in place, the staff that they have, the quality of staff, the quality of people that they have directing them. I thought, even just the PACE logo, for example, was very corporate-y. And the use of the bridge really speaks to kind of a downtown segment of Edmonton, not necessarily the entire city. So all of this positioning kind of really goes into that. But I think the number one indicator will obviously be how well they do in October. But individual candidates are also in between now and then, because it seems like, depending on the party too, how many unknowns there are about these people. If another political party has the opportunity to do any of what's called opposition research, individual candidates might become more known for the things that they shouldn't have said in between now and elections versus the things that they do say.
Marg, should voters expect a role or maybe an attachment for either existing provincial or federal parties? Did they factor into the election equation at some point, either quietly or otherwise?
That's a good question. I am assuming there will be a behind-the-scenes role if it is attached to a federal or provincial party, but I'm really unclear on some of the details of how this is going to play out, so I guess we'll see. But I think there'll be, again, like it or not, if they have an affinity with, or an affiliation, with, the Conservatives or the Liberals, people are going to be drawn that way, whether they want that or not. So, but I agree with Sarah. There's room for individuals. And it really depends how organized they are. Right now, the first group seems a little disorganized, but I guess we'll see where it goes.
Sarah, last 30 seconds to you. How necessary will it be for the parties to attach mayoral candidates to their campaigns?
I think it's important just to have that kind of high-profile person attached, just because of the conversations and the narratives that they'll be able to drive, versus on a ward-by-ward conversation. I will say, Michael, I was in Edmonton a couple of weekends ago, and holy moly, holy is actually very, maybe pun intended, I would be, if I was a voter in Edmonton, I would be looking for someone to tell me when my roads are going to be fixed. Because I was shocked, to be honest,
Yes, there
at
are lots of
the
potholes in
driving
Edmonton.
conditions.
Indeed, indeed. Okay,
So,
I'm afraid we're out of time. We have to leave it there. Good to see you both. Thank you kindly.
Yeah. See ya.
thanks, Michael, Marg.